Welcome back again this week. Circuito de Jerez continues, and we have two super good races to start it off. Last one, a little bit of a different story. We'll get there when we get there, but I do something at the end that you're probably not going to like. After qualifying, we are starting 6th on the grid with a 41.6. Ralph at the top, extremely fast there. Effectively starting in 5th position though because somebody forgot to grid. But as most of you can guess, I am going to lose a position going into turn 1. I don't think anybody is surprised at this point. So back down into 6th position where I originally thought I was going to start. So not at all upset about that. Really can't be upset about losing a position anymore. I would just be sad all of the time. The Sparko car we're going to defend against going into Dry Sack, which is actually the name of that corner, believe it or not. Looking up for a move up the inside here, not quite going to make it work. He cuts across and I back out. Coming into the last sector or the final series of turns on this track, and it is really not my forte on this track, so I am going to lose a bit of time to the cars ahead. Now, this long right-hander was, for the most part, one of my best turns. In this instance, it was not. I lose a few tenths there with that little slide, and the Sparko car is going to look for a move around the outside. I pretty quickly take a defensive line there to let him know that I'm not going to give that position up that easily, and he is right on my tail where he stays for basically the entire race. He was continuing to drive up my inside on just about every single turn. I am assuming that is strategic, is what I was thinking at first. He's constantly in my right mirror, my left mirror, my inside mirror to the turns, which it's making me look in my mirrors, and I understand this tactic. It forces the driver in front into errors because they may be focusing behind more than they are focusing on their own driving, which in a lot of instances did work out, but you'll see in just as many of them, he's compromising his own line so much that he's losing time. So it kind of evened out over the race, and watching the replay back, he did this every single turn, so I'm starting to think that this is just his lines and that he wasn't intentionally trying to have me miss a braking point or turn-in point. As soon as I get a little bit of a gap, I run into the dirt. That's going to slow me down, but not quite enough for him to really get any move done immediately. As we come onto the back straight, though, he is going to get decently close, not really close enough to make a move, but he baits it, and this one does get me. I look into my rear view, brake a little bit too late, and that is going to give him the opportunity to go side by side with me. It's not going to last for too long. I have the inside for the fast left-hander, very hard corner to go too wide on, and he backs out. Coming into the final couple of turns, and he gets pretty close, not quite able to get the best line or get on the power as early as he probably should have right there, but that's not going to stop him from taking a tighter line and staying in my mirrors. It's not really going to pay off for him, and over the course of this race, I think it ultimately evened out in terms of how often I would make an error due to looking in my mirrors versus how often it would compromise his line so much that it basically gave me more cushion. Now, this is going to be his last attempt, diving it from way downtown into Dry Sack, giving me enough room to drive my next couple of laps at my own pace and still maintain a pretty healthy gap there. Doing a little slide into the dirt as a celebration. That race, we're going to end up top 5, gaining 64 I rating and not any safety rating with 122 champion points. Ralph actually went from 1st place down to 17th, which in the last race was the opposite, 17th to 1st. Starting our next race in 7th position overall with a 41.5, effectively 6th as somebody has forgotten to grid again. And again, I am not going to lose a position there. You probably thought that I was, so did I. However, that is not the case in this race, so we are going to maintain 6th position until about 4 turns before the next lap, maybe 5 turns. Going into the dirt here, slowing us down a tremendous amount and losing 4 positions, including this guy who is going to come in and out of existence. We're not going to be behind him for too long, though, as He spins out coming into the final hairpin. I get through safely, car behind, not quite so fortunate. He does manage to keep driving though. Could have been much worse for him. For me though, it couldn't have been better. I have a large gap behind me now. Well, I guess it could have been better if I had somehow teleported into any of the positions ahead of me, which I kind of did because I got his position, the guy who slid, but I could have teleported into first and that would have been much better. We are absolutely hauling ass compared to the guy in front of us coming to the hairpin. I would be lying if I said I was not thinking or having an inkling of a thought there that was telling me to dive bomb him. However, we don't do that. We avoid our intrusive thoughts. Coming onto the back straight, the car ahead takes a pretty wide line, got on the gas a little bit too early there, it looks like. We have a pretty decent run on him, going to follow him for the slipstream, but he actually lets off of the gas, so almost go into the back of him there, but do not, and gain that position. Not my favorite way to gain a position when somebody gives it up, but it is a position, and that's a good thing. By the time we get to the hairpin, the car ahead has driven all the way around the outside of the track, effectively closing the gap by at least half of a second to us, so we are starting to get a little bit of that slipstream and gain on these straights, coming through dry sack, and we gain a tremendous amount of time. We are just about in the position to be looking for an overtake. Setting up on the straight for dry sack, and the car ahead is going to go wide. We follow behind closely, soak up that slipstream and send it up the inside. He gives us that position without too much hassle, which puts us back into P7 where we qualified, so we're breaking even at this point. Fast forward to about 3 laps to the end, and these guys ahead of me are fighting through dry sack and then locking up tires coming onto the straight. In my mind, I have a pretty good chance of gaining this position over the next couple of laps. We close the gap almost enough to start looking for some sort of move, and coming through the final sector, we drive actually through the dirt, somehow manage to almost lose no speed, and again, very tempting to send a dive bomb there, but we don't do it. We back out and look for a decent exit, which we get. Tease the inside there to try and make him look in his mirrors. I believe it worked. He goes just a smidge wide. Coming into turn 2, however, I am going to ruin any chance I had with that small moment, that small little slide and catch. I had to lift off of the gas, and it just opened up too much of a gap for me to close with only 1 lap remaining. That is going to be the end of that race, settling in P7, gaining 58 I rating and 0.1 safety rating, 121 champion points. I am nowhere to be seen in the top 10. As a matter of fact, I am last, so I did not qualify for this session. We're starting in P17 out of 17, immediately sending it 3 wide, and coming into the first turn, we're going to tuck behind the inside, and we actually lose a position around the outside, going 3 wide for just a moment again, and same thing here, tucking in, losing a position on the outside. Coming out of all of that in P16, up 1 position from where I started. Settling into this train and coming into dry sack, I have a decent run, gonna look at the inside. Number 4 sends a huge dive bomb, locking up his tires and kind of blocking off that red guy for me, so I gain both of those positions through the dry sack. Coming to the last sector, and we're really looking to make up as many positions early as we can. This mint and blue car, we're gonna have a tremendous run on, just hug the inside coming into the hairpin, and he moves over to take his line. We slip through. There's actually a car off on the wall and in the pits there, so that's another 2 positions. Coming across the line in P11 after the first lap. A little bit of a hot entry on the first turn. There is some fighting up ahead, so we're going to try and close that gap as much as we can. However, that was definitely not my best run through dry sack, so doesn't really do much for me. However, I get a pretty good run entering into the final series of turns here. Gonna stay on the inside for the next turn. He moves over to take his line, and we slip through again. That red car up ahead is looking like a rare steak, and I'm hungry. He slides into the dirt, coming back onto the track. lighting up his tires, and we are going to go side by side with him into the hairpin and stubbornly refusing to back out, making it work all the way around the outside and getting the drive down just in time. We slide in front of him as soon as we get the clear from our spotter, coming through turn 1 to solidify that position and turning our attention to the cars ahead. We are now in position 9. The 2 cars ahead of us takes a pretty rough line through dry sack, and that's going to slow down himself and the blue car, which just so happened to be the 2 cars that I, in the moment, want to get around. Coming into turn 1, which was probably my most comfortable turn, and we're going to get right up behind car number 12. Eventually, later the lap, looking for a run, but putting too much throttle down too early on that little off-camber section is going to lead to sliding around, slightly overheating my tires, as well as opening up a little gap in front. I'm going to close that gap pretty fast coming through dry sack though, and basically am right where I was before that slide. So back into turn 1 again and looking to take advantage of this turn as much as I can. Do pretty well at that, and he actually moves out of the way, so again, not my favorite way to gain a position, but a position is a position, and the goal of the race is to have as many of those as you can, or I suppose as few of those, as low of a number position as you can. I'm pausing the video to show this cloud. Let me know what you think that looks like. There is a correct answer. I will reveal it later in the video. Making our way back towards dry sack and trying as hard as we can to close this gap as early as we can. There are 2 cars ahead, which I would ideally like to have a battle with and possibly get in front of before the race ends, which I would need to get in front of this car in order to have a better chance at that happening. Now, that being said, coming into the first turn, I'm going to brake as late as I can, which is too late, and go flying past this car, barely managing not to hit it. So the gap opens up, and then coming into the final sector, it's going to close right back up again as he takes super wide line, and we tuck back into that juicy slipstream, getting a decent run through the final sector here. And coming back into turn 1, you're going to see the cars ahead starting to fight, and at the same time we gain a couple of tenths, putting this car number 6 or number 5 under pressure. Little puff of smoke, and as we edge closer to dry sack, car number 5 goes into the dirt. We're looking to make a move work around the outside of the off-camber long right-hander. Extremely hard to do. We almost manage it, however he does eke his way back ahead, braking a little bit early so we can tuck in behind. However, we don't brake hard enough, and we actually just run right into the back of him and punt to pass him. Before you crucify me, I do pull over and I let him through. The blue car goes through with him as well. However, we get that position back on basically the same turn. So he slips back in behind. I'm pretty sure he was just giving that position up again. Another very wide line on the same turn from the car ahead, and it is really going to compromise his speed all the way up onto the hairpin. So we are maintaining our speed at a slightly higher pace than him, looking for the inside here. Not quite going to make it happen. He does drive wide on exit. I think he got nervous about me going up the inside, which is the benefit to doing that. And I slip back in front of him. So as soon as I get the clear from my spotter, I'm going to try and solidify that position. Manage to do it. The aim at this point is really just not to lose this position. Not going to work out too well for me as I drive into the dirt, coming into the uphill section. However, by the grace of the gods, I had just enough of a gap to stay ahead all the way down the straight, soaking up that slipstream into turn 1, and this is actually going to be a battle for P6, which looks amazing, and I don't want any part of it. I'm going to slide my way right out of there and lose my position to the same guy for the 3rd time this race. So back into P8, and at this point it is 2 laps to the end, and the cars ahead in my mind no longer exist. It is just this car number 5. I'm running out of time. I know I can make it past him. I've done it twice before. It's just a matter of making it happen, which is the hardest part. Looking like a significantly better run until a bit of oversteer hits me and I settle in behind car number 5. Taking this corner blind can be pretty tough, so I slow down a little bit just to make sure I'm not going into the dirt, opening up a gap that will pretty safely get him around the hairpin, free of attacks. However, he still drives wide enough for me to go side by side, but not enough in the long run to really look at gaining a position coming into turn 1. Driving through the dirt, again, you can tell I'm pretty anxious. This is the last lap, and I'm trying to get this position, locking up my tires into dry sack. Somehow that doesn't really lose me much time. Coming into the final sector, which was not my best, but I know that it was not his best. It was far from his best, probably his worst. So I have a real chance still, and okay, so I do have a better run, right? I have a better run. It does not justify what I'm about to do, but at the time, I suppose that's why I thought this was possible. He moves over and leaves a space. He does leave a space. It was an extremely optimistic move and just happened to work out. I'm going to give you a couple of different angles here, as many as I could, that really show what's happening. This tire one is going to be the best one. It looks like I may have had some netcode hit him or he locked up. I'm not quite sure. Let me know what your thoughts on that were. Leave a comment. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys think about that one. In the end, though, we are going to come across in P7, so gained 10 positions overall. Lost some safety rating, which is to be expected from that, plus 30 I rating, so we are continuing to climb. 96 champion points. Taking a look at the division standings, and this is all divisions. Michael at the top with 672. I'm 19th overall. And in my division, I am first with 474, so quick math, that's about 18, I think, ahead of the guy beneath me. Back on the week and on these races, pretty happy with my performance in the first two. The last one was definitely a weird one, and I feel really bad about that final move. I did apologize to him in the chat for that. Also, the cloud that we brought up earlier, the correct answer was a male seahorse giving birth to a baby seahorse in a current, in a really strong current. So if you got that, good job, and I'll see you guys later.